A nurse stayed late to comfort a lonely patient, not knowing he was a widowed millionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It's a tale of kindness, unexpected connections, and life-changing revelations. A young nurse's small act of kindness leads to something far beyond what she could have imagined. It all starts with a quiet night in a hospital room. Emma Monroe had been working the night shift at Westbridge Private Hospital for nearly 2 years, and it was just like any other night. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights and the soft sounds of beeping monitors filled the sterile hallway. As a nurse, she had grown used to the quiet, the routine of checking on patients, adjusting IVs, and offering her reassurance. But tonight felt different. Her supervisor had called her into the office earlier that day with an unusual request. "We need someone to stay late and look after Mr. James Carter. He's in room 23. Emma had been given very little information about the patient. Just the name, James Carter. At first, she didn't think much of it. But when she saw the file on the desk, her eyes froze. James Carter. The name rang a bell. The richest man in the city. A billionaire CEO. His company, Carter Enterprises, was one of the most powerful in the country. She had read about him in the news many times. Always seen in luxurious settings, surrounded by business deals and high-profile events. But here he was, lying in a sterile hospital room, vulnerable, hooked up to machines that kept him alive. He had been in a coma for nearly 6 months after a terrible car accident. Emma didn't know much about his personal life, but it didn't take long to realize that he was alone in that room. No family members, no visitors, just the steady beeping of his heart monitor. The family of someone as powerful as James Carter surely should have been here, right? But they weren't. Emma had always felt a soft spot for patients like him, the ones who seemed to be forgotten by everyone except the hospital staff. Maybe it was because she had lost her own mother years ago, and the pain of not being there in her final moments had never fully healed. She couldn't help but think that maybe Mr. Carter, too, had been left behind by everyone, even if he was the wealthiest man in the city. She checked his vitals and adjusted his blankets, ensuring he was comfortable. As she did, she whispered a few words to him, even though she knew he couldn't hear her. "I know you're in there somewhere, Mr. Carter. I'll be here. I'll take care of you." As the night passed, she found herself checking on him more often, talking to him as though he could hear every word. She shared stories of her day, of the little things that made her smile. She spoke of her dreams, of the hope that one day she would make a difference in the world. She even laughed at herself for feeling silly, but it felt like the right thing to do. What she didn't know was that her words, her kindness, were slowly beginning to make an impact. Mr. James Carter, the billionaire, the powerful man who had seemed so unreachable, was starting to feel something stir within him. And Emma, the young nurse, had no idea that this simple act of compassion would change both their lives forever. Emma had never felt more certain about her purpose in the hospital than she did that night. She walked into Mr. Carter's room as she had countless times before, her mind on the routine tasks ahead. Yet, there was something different tonight. The quiet, steady beeping of his heart monitor, the soft hum of the machines surrounding him. It all felt more intimate, more alive. She carefully adjusted the four-drip, checking the settings as she always did. The soft light of the hallway barely reached into the room, casting long shadows across the floor. Mr. Carter was still unconscious, his face pale but serene, as though in a deep, untroubled sleep. Emma moved to his bedside, pulling the chair a little closer, as she had done each night. It had become a habit now, her routine, his silence. But tonight, there was a palpable shift in the air, a feeling that Emma couldn't quite place. As she sat, she leaned forward, adjusting his blanket, smoothing out the wrinkles in the fabric. The room was cold, but she hadn't brought her jacket in. She didn't need it. For a brief moment, she let her guard down, allowing herself to think. How was it that someone so important, so wealthy, so powerful, could be left in a room like this, alone? She tried to imagine the world he had once been a part of. The news articles, the headlines about his massive business empire, the wealth and respect he commanded. And yet, In that moment, he seemed so far from all of it. She couldn't help but feel an odd sense of camaraderie with him, though she knew he could never hear her thoughts. She reached over, brushing a strand of his dark hair from his forehead, careful not to disturb the wires and tubes connected to him. It was a simple gesture, but one that made her feel like she was doing something more, something that went beyond her job as a nurse. Emma cleared her throat, and, more for herself than for him, spoke softly. I know it's probably silly, but I can't help wondering if you've ever really been happy, Mr. Carter. I mean, what is it all for? All the money, all the power. If you're alone in a hospital room, with no one around to care. She paused, feeling a slight twinge of guilt. She was talking as though he could hear her, but it made her feel better to get it out. I guess I just want you to wake up and tell me it's all worth it. Tell me you've had a life full of joy and love. Emma paused, swallowing hard as she looked at the still form in the bed. She was used to this, used to seeing patients in various stages of recovery or decline, but somehow, Mr. Carter felt different. There was something more to him than just his status as a patient. She couldn't put her finger on it, but there was a presence about him, something quiet and powerful that drew her in. A noise broke her from her thoughts, a faint beep on the heart monitor. Emma froze, her breath caught in her throat. She stared at the screen for a moment, then looked down at Mr. Carter. Not sure if she had imagined it. The beep came again, a little louder this time, more pronounced. Her heart raced as she leaned closer to his bedside, her hands trembling slightly. Was it possible? Could he be waking up? Mr. Carter, she whispered, leaning closer, her voice barely more than a breath. There was no response, but she didn't give up. She pressed the call button for the doctor, then took his hand in hers, her fingers brushing the cold skin of his palm. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, his fingers moved. Emma gasped, feeling a rush of adrenaline. His fingers twitched, slowly at first, and then with a little more strength. She tightened her grip, holding on as if willing him to keep going. His hand moved again, this time gripping hers slightly, as if trying to make contact. The machines beeped faster, the rhythm quickening as the heart monitor showed a slight increase in his pulse. Emma's breath caught in her chest as she realized that, against all odds, Mr. Carter was waking up. She pressed the call button again, more urgently this time. Doctor, nurse, please come quickly. She didn't let go of his hand, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time in what felt like forever, the room was no longer just the sterile environment of a hospital. It was alive with possibility. The doctor arrived moments later, his face a mixture of disbelief and professional concern as he checked the readings on the monitor. It's impossible, he muttered under his breath. We weren't expecting any change this soon. The room buzzed with energy as the medical team scrambled into action, adjusting machines, taking readings, and monitoring Mr. Carter's vitals. Emma stood back, watching the scene unfold, her heart still racing. She had done nothing but hold his hand and talk to him, but somehow it had worked. Somehow, her small act of kindness had sparked something in him. As the doctor made adjustments, Emma's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. What did this mean? Why now? She wasn't sure, but in that moment, she felt like something had changed between them, something far beyond the typical nurse-patient relationship. And even though she had no idea what the future held, she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. Emma stood by Mr. Carter's bedside, her heart still racing from the events of the last few minutes. The room, which had been eerily quiet for so long, was now filled with a flurry of activity as the medical staff rushed to stabilize him. She barely noticed when the doctor gave her an encouraging nod, too absorbed in the sight of Mr. Carter's slowly improving condition. It felt surreal, as though she had been part of some miracle. The steady beeping of his heart monitor was the only sound, growing stronger with every passing second. Emma, still holding his hand, whispered softly, her voice barely audible. I knew you were still in there, Mr. Carter. I knew it. She wasn't sure if he could hear her, but somehow, she felt connected to him in a way she hadn't with any other patient. As the doctors and nurses worked to assess his progress, Emma stepped back slightly, her mind spinning. It had only been moments since he'd responded to her touch. The life she had known as a nurse, routine, quiet, detached, had shifted in an instant. This man, once a distant figure in the business world, now seemed so human, so fragile. The cold, calculating persona, she had imagined for him was slowly being replaced by something more real. But what did this mean? Why was she suddenly feeling so connected to him? As the night wore on, Mr. Carter remained stable. The doctors left the room, and the quiet returned, but Emma was left with her thoughts. She glanced at him once more, wondering if he was awake enough to understand the changes around him. His eyes remained closed, but there was a faint shift in his features, something she could almost call a smile, though faint. Emma hesitated, her gaze lingering on his face. She couldn't explain it, but there was something about him that made her feel a sense of responsibility that went beyond her job description. This wasn't just about taking care of a patient anymore. It was something deeper. She had been caring for him without any expectations, simply doing her best to make him comfortable. But now, she found herself hoping for something more, hoping that he would wake up and acknowledge her in a way that went beyond her role as a nurse. The next morning, when Emma returned to his room, she was greeted by an unexpected sight. Mr. Carter's eyes were open, his gaze fixed on the ceiling above him. He blinked slowly, taking in his surroundings as though he were waking up from a long, deep sleep. It was the first time she had seen him conscious, and for a moment, she felt her breath catch in her throat. He wasn't fully alert, but there was a noticeable change in him. His eyes shifted to her, and for a split second, they locked. There was something in his gaze that Emma couldn't quite place. Was it confusion, recognition, or something else entirely? "Mr. Carter," she said softly, her voice full of concern. His lips parted, but no words came out at first. He swallowed hard, and then spoke in a voice that was hoarse and weak. "Where am I?" His voice was low, barely above a whisper, but it sent a shock through Emma. She wasn't prepared for it, the sound of his voice after so many days of silence. "You're in the hospital, Mr. Carter. You've been in a coma for a while," she explained gently. "How are you feeling?" He seemed to be processing her words, his brow furrowing slightly as if trying to make sense of them. Slowly, his eyes drifted around the room again, taking in the sterile environment. "I don't remember anything," he murmured, his voice tinged with confusion. Emma took a cautious step closer, her heart aching at the vulnerability she saw in him. The man who had once been the epitome of power, the man whose decisions had shaped industries, now seemed lost and uncertain, as though the world he had known had been erased. "That's okay," Emma said softly, offering him a reassuring smile. "You've been through a lot. It'll take some time, but you're safe now. You're going to be okay." She hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Is there anyone I can call for you? Family? Friends?" His gaze shifted again, and for a moment, Emma thought he might say something, but he didn't. His eyes fell to the side, his expression distant. "No one," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I don't have anyone." The words hung heavy in the air, and Emma felt a deep sadness well up inside her. How could someone with so much power, someone who seemed so invincible from the outside, end up feeling so alone? She didn't know what to say, but she could see the struggle. In his eyes, the battle to remember, to reclaim something from the past that seemed to have slipped away. She reached out, placing her hand gently on his. "You're not alone, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "You have me. I'll be here to help you." For the first time, he looked at her, really looked at her, as though seeing her for the first time. It wasn't the look of a patient toward a nurse, but something deeper, something more personal. Emma couldn't help but feel the weight of that gaze, the unspoken connection that was forming between them. She knew she had a job to do, and she would do it, no matter what. But at that moment, as she sat beside him, she couldn't ignore the strange pull between them. What had started as a simple act of kindness was beginning to feel like something much more complex, something that neither of them could fully understand yet. The days that followed Mr. Carter's awakening were a whirlwind. Emma found herself caught between her professional duties and the growing sense of attachment she felt towards him. Despite his initial confusion and disorientation, there was something in his eyes now, something she couldn't quite place. It wasn't just the weariness of someone coming out of a coma. It was a sadness, a depth that she hadn't expected to see from someone so wealthy and powerful. She had seen him as a symbol of strength, a man who controlled industries and made decisions that affected millions. But now, sitting beside him as he slowly regained his bearings, Emma realized that even the most untouchable figures were vulnerable. The next few days brought more changes. Mr. Carter, or James, as he insisted she call him now, was becoming more aware. His mind was sharp, though fragmented at times. The doctors had warned that it could take months for his memory to fully return, but Emma noticed the small signs of improvement. One day, as she entered his room to check his vitals, she found him sitting up in bed, staring out the window. The light from the late afternoon sun bathed the room in a soft glow, and for a moment, he looked almost peaceful. "You're awake early," Emma said, her voice light and cheerful. He glanced at her, offering a faint smile. "I couldn't sleep," he replied, his voice still raspy but stronger than before. "I keep thinking. I don't know what to think anymore." Emma set down the chart she was holding and walked over to his bedside. "It's normal to feel lost after something like this," she said, sitting down on the chair next to him. "You've been through a lot." He nodded, looking out the window again. "I don't remember much. Just flashes." He paused, as if trying to gather his thoughts. "And then, there's this." His hand gestured weakly toward the hospital room. "This emptiness." Emma felt a pang in her chest. She had heard stories of the rich and famous living isolated lives, surrounded by people, but always alone in the end. But to hear James, the man who had everything, speak of emptiness like this, it was something she hadn't expected. "You're not alone," she said softly. "You have people here who care about you." James turned his gaze to her, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of something deeper in his eyes. Gratitude? Or perhaps recognition? She couldn't tell. "Do I?" His voice was quieter now, more vulnerable than she had ever heard it. "I have a company. I have money. But no one." His words trailed off, and the silence in the room felt heavy. Emma didn't know what to say. She could see the weight of his words, the loneliness behind them. In her own way, she understood. She had lost her own family too, and though she wasn't a millionaire, she had known what it felt like to be alone in a crowded room. She placed a hand on his, just for a moment, offering him what little comfort she could. "You're not alone," she repeated, more firmly this time. "I'll be here, and I'm not the only one." James looked at her again, a small, appreciative smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Thank you, Emma." It was the first time he had used her name. It wasn't much, but it meant everything to her. Over the following days, Emma continued to care for James. His memory remained fragmented, but his mind was sharp, and he began asking more questions about her life, her background, her reasons for becoming a nurse. She found herself opening up to him in a way she hadn't expected. She shared stories of her childhood, her mother's passing, and how she had decided to become a nurse in honor of the promise she had made to her mother to never let someone be alone in their final moments. She spoke with a calm that belied the deep emotion she still felt, but James listened intently, as if he understood every word. Their conversations grew more personal as the days went on. He began to share fragments of his own life, though they were still clouded by confusion. He spoke of his wife, a woman he had loved deeply, and the pain of losing her in an accident that had shattered his world. He told her about the company, about how he had built it from the ground up, but how the weight of success had come with a price: loneliness, isolation, and regret. "I thought I had everything," he said one evening, his voice low as he gazed out the window again. "But in the end, it all feels empty. What's the point of all this if I don't have anyone to share it with?" Emma didn't have an answer to that. She couldn't fix his problems or take away the pain of his loss. But she could be there. She could listen. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between them grew stronger. James became more alert, more aware of his surroundings, but the physical therapy was slow, and his recovery took time. Still, Emma was there every day, offering him encouragement and support. One afternoon, as she helped him with his exercises, he looked at her with a newfound intensity, his eyes searching hers. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Emma," he said quietly. "You've been the only one here for me, through all of this." Her heart skipped a beat. She had heard patients thank her before, but something about his words, the way he said them, felt different. She wasn't sure what it meant, but it was a moment she knew she would never forget. For James, it seemed that the darkness he had been trapped in for so long was slowly beginning to lift, and it was all thanks to the woman who had stayed late that night, offering him not just her care, but her presence, something he had never truly experienced before. As the days passed, Emma began to notice a subtle but undeniable shift in the atmosphere between her and James. What had started as a simple nurse-patient relationship was evolving into something deeper. She could see it in the way he looked at her, the way he took every opportunity to talk to her, as if trying to make up for lost time. His progress was slow but steady. Each day, his strength seemed to grow, and with it, a new sense of purpose. He was no longer the frail man who had once been trapped in a coma, but a man determined to rebuild his life. Emma had been with him through every step of this recovery, and she had become his anchor. They had spoken about many things over the past few weeks: his business, his late wife, the regrets he carried, and the loneliness that had defined so much of his life. But there was something that Emma had always wanted to ask him, something that had been lingering in her mind since the moment he had first woken up. One evening, as she sat beside his bed, helping him with his physical therapy, she decided to ask. "James," she began, her voice softer than usual, "you've talked a lot about the company, about your wife. But what about you? What do you want? What's next for you?" He stopped for a moment, looking down at his hands, and Emma could see the gears turning in his mind. It was clear that no one had ever asked him that before. His life had been about building empires, making deals, but no one had ever really asked him about his own desires, his own future. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of vulnerability and resolve. "I don't know," he admitted quietly. "I've spent so many years chasing success, running after things I thought I needed to feel whole. But now, I'm not so sure. I'm starting to wonder if maybe the things I thought mattered don't." Emma's heart ached for him. She could hear the uncertainty in his voice, the weight of a life spent trying to fill a void that had never been truly addressed. She had seen it in her own life, that constant pursuit of something bigger, only to realize that the most important things had always been right in front of her. "James," she said gently, "maybe it's not about having everything. Maybe it's about finding peace with what you have, with who you are." He nodded slowly, as if her words were sinking in. "I've never thought about it that way," he murmured, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Maybe I've been looking for the wrong things all along." As the days continued to pass, Emma and James spent more time talking about what the future could look like. They began to imagine a life beyond the walls of the hospital, beyond the shadows of his business empire. James, with his strength and wealth, could have anything, but what he truly needed, what he had been missing for so long, was the connection, the sense of belonging that he had never allowed himself to feel. Emma, on the other hand, had always known the value of human connection. It was what had driven her to nursing in the first place, the desire to make a difference in someone's life. And now, as she spent more time with James, she began to realize something else. It wasn't just the care she had for him as a patient that kept her coming back every day. It was something more. She couldn't ignore the way her heart fluttered whenever he smiled at her, the way his presence seemed to fill a space inside her that she hadn't known was empty. She had always kept a distance from her patients, maintaining the professional barrier that was expected of her. But with James, that distance was fading, and Emma found herself wondering if there was something more between them. One evening, after a particularly long day, James looked at her with a gaze that was no longer uncertain. He seemed to have made up his mind about something. "Emma," he began, his voice steady, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about finding peace." He paused, taking a deep breath. "And I think you're right. I've spent so long focusing on the wrong things, but I'm starting to see that maybe what I really want isn't more success or more money." He looked directly into her eyes, and for the first time, Emma saw the depth of his feelings. "What I want, Emma, is a chance to start over, to find something real. And I think I want to find that with you." Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. Not like this, not now. She had always been careful to keep her feelings in check, to remain focused on her role as a nurse, but now, standing in front of him, she couldn't deny what was bubbling up inside her. She had grown to care for him deeply. "James," she whispered, unsure of how to respond. I don't know what to say." He stepped closer, gently reaching for her hand. "You don't have to say anything, Emma. I just wanted you to know that I don't want to go through this life alone anymore. I don't want to keep pretending that I have it all figured out when I don't." Emma's breath caught in her throat, and she squeezed his hand gently. The warmth of his touch, the sincerity in his eyes, made her heart ache with something deeper than she had expected. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. Their journey had only just begun. And whatever came next, they would face it together. Over the following weeks, Emma and James grew closer. What had once been a relationship built solely on care and recovery began to evolve into something deeper. Emma had always known the importance of professional boundaries, but as the days passed, she couldn't ignore the undeniable connection that had grown between them. James, who had once been isolated in his wealth and success, now seemed more open, more human than ever before. He shared more about his life, his regrets, and the years he had spent chasing something that, in the end, had left him empty. Emma, too, found herself revealing more of her own story. She had grown up with little, her dreams of becoming a nurse born from a promise she had made to her mother. Her mother had always been the one who had taught her the importance of compassion, the value of caring for others. And now, as Emma looked at James, she realized that compassion had brought them both together. One evening, as they sat together in his room, James turned to her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Emma," he began, his voice soft, "I've been thinking about what you said. About starting over. About finding something real." Emma glanced at him, her heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. James took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "I think I want to try. I want to try to build something, with you. Something real, something that goes beyond what I've had before. I know I've hurt people, including myself, by focusing too much on my company, on my wealth, and I don't want to make that mistake again." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure what to say, but she knew in that moment that her feelings for him had changed. They had been changing for a while, but now, hearing him speak so openly, so honestly, she realized how deeply she had fallen for him. "James," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, "I don't know what the future holds, but I want to be there with you. I want to try too." He smiled, and for the first time in a long while, it wasn't a forced smile. It was genuine, warm. The kind of smile that made her heart flutter. "You don't know how much that means to me, Emma," he said, reaching for her hand. She took it, her fingers trembling just slightly, but it was a reassuring gesture. They had both been through so much, but in that moment, they both understood something fundamental. They weren't alone anymore. Over the next few days, Emma and James spent more time together outside of the hospital room. Though he was still recovering, James had started to regain his strength, and the doctors had given him permission to leave the hospital for short trips. They went for walks in the park, visited a small cafe nearby, and even spent quiet evenings talking about everything and nothing. James had never really known how to relax before. His life had always been driven by deadlines, meetings, and endless demands. But now, with Emma by his side, he found a new sense of peace in the simplest moments. They laughed together, talked about their hopes and dreams, and for the first time in years, James felt truly seen. One afternoon, as they sat on a park bench, the sun shining down on them, Emma looked at James with a soft smile. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice light, "about the future." James raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What about it?" "I don't know," she continued. "I just feel like I don't know what comes next for us, but whatever it is, I want to face it together." James looked at her, his gaze serious now. "I feel the same way. I don't know what the future holds either, but I know that I don't want to do it alone. You've been the one constant in my life these past few weeks, and I don't want that to end." Emma's heart swelled in her chest. She had never expected this deep connection, this bond that had formed so naturally between them. She had gone into this job simply wanting to help, but now she realized that it had changed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had found something more than just a patient to care for. She had found someone who truly saw her, who valued her. And in return, she had come to see him for who he truly was. Not just the powerful billionaire, but a man who had been broken by loss and was now trying to find his way back. "I don't want it to end either," Emma said quietly, her hand finding his again. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound being the rustle of the leaves in the trees above them. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt at peace. James, too, seemed at ease, as though the weight of the past had been momentarily lifted. It was a small moment, but one that held the promise of something more. As the days continued to pass, James began to make plans for his future. He decided to take a step back from his company, to focus on healing, both physically and emotionally. He knew it would take time, but he also knew that he couldn't continue living the way he had been. He wanted to do things differently this time. Emma was right. It wasn't about success or money. It was about finding peace, finding love, and finding a way to move forward. And as he looked at Emma, he realized that the future he wanted was one where she was by his side. The hospital, the recovery, everything that had brought them together, it all felt like the beginning of a new chapter. And for the first time in years, James was ready to turn the page. As the weeks turned into months, the bond between Emma and James deepened. They had come a long way since the days when he had first awoken in the hospital, disoriented and fragile. Now, James was stronger, both physically and emotionally. His recovery was still ongoing, but he had made great strides. The doctors were pleased with his progress, and though he still had his moments of doubt and uncertainty, Emma could see the man he was becoming, a man who was no longer defined by his wealth or his company, but by his desire for something more real. For the first time in years, James had started to take a genuine interest in the things that truly mattered to him. He was no longer just the CEO of Carter Enterprises. He was a man trying to rediscover what he had lost along the way: love, connection, and peace. Emma had become his guide, his confidant, and, in many ways, his strength. Their relationship had grown from something that had started with simple care and concern into something far more profound. They had shared stories, dreams, and their deepest fears. For Emma, it was a journey she had never expected. She had always prided herself on maintaining professional boundaries, but with James, it felt impossible to keep them. She had grown to care for him in ways she had never thought possible. One evening, as they sat together in the garden behind the hospital, James turned to her with a serious look on his face. "Emma," he said, his voice calm but with a hint of something deeper. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about not being alone, and I've come to realize something." She looked at him, waiting for him to continue. "I don't want to be alone anymore," he said, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "And I don't just mean in the way you've been helping me through my recovery. I mean in life. I want to build a life with you, Emma." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She had always known that their connection was special, but hearing him say it out loud, so plainly, was something else. She felt her heart flutter, her mind racing with thoughts she hadn't allowed herself to think before. Could it be that he felt the same way she did? Could this really be the beginning of something more than just a fleeting connection? She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "James," she whispered, her voice soft but firm, "I care about you, more than I've ever cared about anyone before." He reached out, taking her hand in his touch warm and steady. "I know you do," he said gently, "and I care about you too. I think I've known for a while now, but I needed to admit it to myself first. I don't want to wait anymore. I want us to have something real, something lasting." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. It was a moment she had dreamed about but never expected to come. She had spent so much of her life caring for others, but now, for the first time, she felt like she was being cared for in a way she had never known. "I want that too," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been afraid of it, of what it means, but I'm ready now, ready to take that leap with you." James squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with warmth. "We'll figure it out together, Emma. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As they sat in the quiet garden, the weight of his words settled in her heart. She knew that their journey had only just begun. There were still so many uncertainties ahead, but in that moment, she felt a sense of peace. They didn't need to have all the answers right away. They just needed to be together, to support each other, and to take each step as it came. The future was uncertain, but they were no longer afraid of it. They had each other, and that was enough. As the days passed, Emma and James continued to grow closer. They spent more time together, exploring the world outside the hospital and learning more about each other with each passing day. Emma began to see James not just as the man she had cared for, but as someone who was finally allowing himself to be vulnerable, to be open. He wasn't the same man who had come into the hospital, shut off from the world. Now, he was someone who was learning to live again, someone who was beginning to find peace in the simple things, like a quiet walk through the park or a cup of coffee shared in the morning sun. They didn't need grand gestures or elaborate plans. They had each other, and that was enough. James had once believed that his wealth and success were all that mattered, but now, he understood something far more important. That love, connection, and the willingness to be vulnerable were the true measures of a fulfilling life. As Emma helped him navigate this new chapter, he found a joy in the smallest moments. He didn't have to be the powerful businessman anymore. He could just be himself. And Emma, in turn, found herself happier than she had ever been, knowing that the man she had once seen as distant and unreachable was now the one she cared for more than anything. Their story was just beginning, but it was already one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a future that neither of them had ever expected, but both of them had always longed for. In the weeks that followed, Emma and James grew even closer, solidifying the connection they had started to build. They found solace in each other's company, each day bringing a deeper understanding of what they wanted out of life, and more importantly, what they wanted from each other. James had made the decision to step back from his role at Carter Enterprises, deciding to focus on his recovery and healing, both physically and emotionally. He had given up his old life of constant meetings, decisions, and expectations. For the first time in years, he felt like he could breathe freely, unburdened by the weight of his former lifestyle. Emma had noticed the change in him. His eyes no longer carried the weight of regret that had once defined him. There was a lightness to his steps now, a joy in the small things that he had never allowed himself to experience before. It wasn't about wealth or power anymore. It was about the simple moments they shared. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of his apartment, watching the sunset over the city, James turned to Emma, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said quietly, "I've spent so much of my life thinking that I needed to be this larger-than-life figure. The powerful CEO, the one everyone looks up to. But the truth is, I don't want that anymore." Emma glanced at him, intrigued by his words. "What do you want, James?" she asked, her voice soft. He smiled, the first time she had seen him. Smile without any hint of reservation. "I want peace, Emma. I want to build a life with someone who sees me for who I really am. Not just the man I was before, but the man I am now." Emma's heart swelled in her chest. She had always seen him for who he was, from the moment he had first woken up in the hospital. It wasn't his wealth or status that had drawn her to him. It was his vulnerability, his willingness to change, and the kindness that had slowly emerged from the man who had once seemed so untouchable. "James," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "you don't have to be anyone other than who you are. I've always seen you for you. I think that's the best part of all of this, getting to know the real you." He took her hand in his, gently squeezing it. "You've been my guide through all of this," he said, "and I don't know where I would be without you." Emma smiled softly, touched by his words. "I'm just doing my job," she said with a wink. "But I'm glad to be here with you, every step of the way." Over the next few months, Emma and James continued to explore their relationship. It wasn't always easy. There were days when the weight of their past seemed too much to bear, and the uncertainty of their future lingered in the back of their minds. But they had come to understand something important. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about growing together, supporting each other, and finding joy in the small moments, even when life felt uncertain. One Saturday afternoon, they took a trip to a small town outside of the city, seeking some time away from the hustle and bustle. They spent the day walking hand in hand through a quiet park, enjoying the simplicity of the moment. James had never experienced anything like it. The feeling of being completely present, with no expectations, no deadlines. It was just the two of them, and the world seemed to slow down. As they sat on a bench, overlooking a serene lake, James turned to Emma, his gaze serious but full of warmth. "Emma," he began, his voice steady, "I've been thinking a lot about us. About the future." Emma's heart skipped a beat, her breath catching in her throat. She had been thinking about the same thing, but hadn't known how to bring it up. "What about the future?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "I don't know exactly what it will look like," he said, "but I know I want to spend it with you. I want us to build something together, something lasting." Emma felt a surge of emotion flood through her. She had always known that James was the person she wanted to be with, but hearing him say it, hearing him express his desire for a future together, made everything feel so real. "I want that too," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." James leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a soft, tender kiss. It wasn't the passionate kiss of a whirlwind romance. but something deeper, something more meaningful. It was a kiss that spoke of trust, of shared dreams, and of the beginning of a new chapter in both of their lives. As they pulled away, James rested his forehead against hers, his hands gently holding her face. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" he said, his voice full of wonder. Emma smiled, her heart full. "Yes, we have. And we've got a long way to go." They both knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and fears about the future. But they also knew that they had something special, something worth fighting for. They were no longer two strangers brought together by circumstance. They were partners, united by love and the desire to create something real, something lasting. And that, they both knew, was enough to carry them through whatever came next. As Emma and James began to settle into their new life together, they found themselves navigating both the joys and the challenges of a relationship that had started in the most unconventional way. They had come a long way from their first days together in the hospital, and now, they were building something real, a future based on mutual respect, trust, and love. James had stepped away from his role as the CEO of Carter Enterprises, focusing instead on his recovery, his emotional healing, and most importantly, on the future he wanted to build with Emma. He had begun to see the world through a new lens, one that didn't revolve around power and success, but rather the simple pleasures of life, the quiet moments with Emma, the peace he felt when they were together. They spent their days exploring the city, going on long walks, and even visiting places James had never taken the time to experience before. It was as if he was rediscovering the world, this time with Emma by his side. But there were still moments when the past crept in, moments when the weight of his former life, the empire he had built, would resurface, threatening to pull him back into the old patterns of thinking. It wasn't easy for James to let go of everything he had worked so hard for. He had spent so many years chasing after success, but now he was starting to realize that success wasn't enough. It didn't fill the emptiness he had always carried. One evening, after dinner, as they sat on the couch in James' apartment, he turned to Emma, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about something," he said quietly. "I know I've made progress, and I'm not the same man I was when I first came out of that coma. But I still feel like there's something missing. I'm not sure how to let go of it all. The pressure, the expectations, the constant drive to succeed." Emma turned to him, her heart aching at the vulnerability in his voice. She had seen him struggle with this before, the battle between the man he had been and the man he wanted to become. "James," she said gently, "I know it's hard, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm here with you, every step of the way." James sighed, rubbing his hands over his face. "I know, but it's not just about you and me. It's about everything I built. How do I just walk away from all of that? How do I let go of the company, the legacy I created? It's hard to even imagine my life without it." Emma reached out, taking his hand in hers. "I understand, but you have to ask yourself what truly matters. You've already built something incredible with your company, but now it's time to build something new, something that's just for you. It's not about giving up everything. It's about choosing to live for something that brings you joy, something that makes you feel whole." James looked at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if I'm ready for that. What if I fail?" Emma smiled softly, her thumb gently stroking the back of his hand. "Failure isn't the worst thing that could happen. It's not about being perfect. It's about trying and learning and growing. And you're not alone in this. We'll face it together, just like we've done everything else." Her words, filled with sincerity and compassion, seemed to calm him. For the first time in weeks, James felt a sense of clarity. It wasn't about abandoning the past, but rather about embracing a future that was full of possibility. The future he wanted, the one he had always longed for, was one where he wasn't defined by his business, but by his relationships, by the people he loved. And Emma was at the center of that future. As the days passed, James began to make more significant decisions about his future. He hired a team to help manage Carter Enterprises, taking a step back from the daily operations and focusing instead on the things that truly mattered to him. He spent more time with Emma, learning to enjoy the simple pleasures of life, cooking dinner together, taking weekend trips to explore new places, and even starting to volunteer at a local charity. Emma, too, had found a new sense of purpose in their relationship. As she watched James embrace this new chapter, she realized that her role wasn't just to take care of him physically, but to help him rebuild his life emotionally. She was there to support him, to encourage him, and to remind him that he was worthy of love and happiness, no matter his past. One evening, as they sat on the balcony, watching the sun set over the horizon, James turned to Emma with a look of gratitude in his eyes. "I never thought I'd be here, doing this, living a life that's actually mine, not dictated by the expectations of others," he said softly. "I never imagined it would feel like this." Emma smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It's because you're finally living for yourself, James. You're not doing it for anyone else. And that makes all the difference." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the world around them change with the setting sun. The future was still uncertain, but they knew one thing for sure. They were ready to face it together. Whatever came their way, they would do it side by side, building the life they had always dreamed of, a life that was full of love, peace, and possibility. As the months passed, Emma and James continued to grow, their bond strengthening in ways neither of them had anticipated. They had both come a long way since their initial meeting, and their journey together was now a testament to the power of change, healing, and love. James had found a new sense of purpose, one that was no longer defined by the empire he had built or the wealth that once consumed him. He had stepped away from his role at Carter Enterprises, allowing others to manage the business while he focused on the things that truly mattered. And Emma, who had once seen herself as just a caregiver, now found herself sharing in his newfound peace and joy. They had come to understand that their love wasn't about perfection or grand gestures, but about the simple, everyday moments they shared. It wasn't always easy, of course. There were times when the weight of their past seemed to loom over them, when old habits and fears crept in. But each time they faced those challenges, they did so together, supporting each other through the difficult moments. One morning, as they sat in the kitchen of their apartment, sipping coffee and talking about their plans for the day, James looked at Emma with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said quietly, "I've been thinking a lot about our future, and I think I'm finally ready to make some big decisions." Emma looked at him, intrigued. "What kind of decisions?" she asked, her voice soft. James took a deep breath, clearly weighing his words. "I want to make things official, Emma. I want to stop hiding from what's real between us. I know we've been taking things slow, and I respect that, but I don't want to waste any more time. I'm ready for a future with you. A real future." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to say it out loud, but hearing him speak those words made everything feel so much more real. She had always known that James was the one she wanted to build a life with, but hearing him voice the same desire filled her with warmth. "I want that too," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've been ready for a while now." James smiled, a mixture of relief and happiness in his eyes. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I know," he said gently, "and I want to make this official. I don't want to wait anymore. I want us to take that next step together." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with emotion. She had always been cautious, afraid of moving too fast, but now she realized that she was ready. Ready to take a leap of faith with him, ready to embrace the future they had both been dreaming of. "What do you have in mind?" she asked, her voice soft. James leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. "I think we should get married," he said quietly, his eyes searching hers for a reaction. "I know it might seem fast, but we've already been through so much together, and I don't want to spend another day without you by my side." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected him to say that, but as soon as the words left his lips, she realized that it felt right. Everything about their journey had led to this moment, and she couldn't imagine spending her life with anyone else. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, I want to marry you." James smiled, his eyes shining with joy. "You have no idea how happy that makes me," he said, his voice full of warmth. He stood up, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "We've been through so much, and now we have the chance to build a life together. A life that's ours, no one else's." Emma held on to him, her heart overflowing with love. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but with James by her side, she felt ready to face whatever challenges came their way. They had both healed in ways they never thought possible, and now they were ready to embrace the future as partners, as equals. They spent the next few days planning their future, talking about everything they wanted to do together. They dreamed of traveling the world, of starting a family, and of building a life that was truly their own. And as they made plans, Emma couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. She had never imagined that her life would turn out like this, that she would find love in such an unexpected place, with someone who had once seemed so far out of reach. But now, with James by her side, everything felt possible. They were ready to face the future together, whatever it might hold. Their love was real, and that was enough. As they stood together, hand in hand, looking out at the world in front of them, they knew that their story was just beginning. A story of love, healing, and a future that was full of endless possibilities. As the days turned into weeks, Emma and James found themselves not only deepening their relationship, but also navigating the realities of building a future together. Their love had blossomed quickly, but with that came the inevitable challenges of blending their pasts, their goals, and their desires for the future. They had both agreed that the next step in their journey was marriage. But even as they prepared for this next chapter, they were acutely aware that their love was only part of the equation. Life would bring new hurdles. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of their apartment, sipping wine and watching the city lights flicker in the distance, James turned to Emma with a contemplative look on his face. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice soft but serious, "about our future, about marriage, and everything that comes with it." Emma tilted her head slightly, sensing the weight behind his words. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her heart slightly racing with anticipation. "I know we've talked about this before," James said, taking a deep breath, "but I don't want to rush into anything without being completely sure. It's not just about the wedding, it's about everything that follows. I want to make sure that we're both ready for this." Emma reached across the table, placing her hand on his. "I think we've both been ready for a while now, James," she said with a soft smile. "We've already built something real, something we can both stand on. It's not just about getting married. It's about living a life together, creating a future together. And I know that no matter what, we can handle it. Together." James smiled at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. Her words meant more to him than she could know. He had spent so much of his life thinking he had to control everything, to have everything figured out. But now, with Emma by his side, he understood that sometimes it wasn't about perfection or control. It was about trust, about knowing that no matter what challenges they faced, they would face them together. "You're right," he said softly, his eyes locking with hers. "I guess I've been afraid of not being enough, afraid of failing. But with you, I feel like I can do anything. Like I can actually have a future, one that's mine, one that's real." Emma squeezed his hand gently, her eyes filled with love. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. We've been through so much together, and we've come out stronger on the other side. We've already shown that we can build something beautiful. And that's just the beginning." Over the next few weeks, they dove into the details of their wedding plans. It was a beautiful process, one that filled them both with excitement and joy. They found the perfect venue, a small, intimate place that reflected their journey and the love they had built. It wasn't grand or extravagant, but it was perfect for them. As they discussed the details, from the flowers to the vows, they realized just how much they had learned about each other and how far they had come since their first meeting. Emma had once been a simple nurse, dedicated to helping others, while James had been a powerful businessman, consumed by his work. But now, they were partners, standing side by side, ready to take on whatever came next. James had even taken the time to meet with the team he had left behind at Carter Enterprises, making sure that the company was in good hands. It was a small but significant gesture, showing that he was no longer running from his past, but accepting it, learning from it, and moving forward. He was no longer defined by his wealth or his title. He was a man who had found love, peace, and purpose. And Emma was the person who had shown him what really mattered. The night before their wedding, as they sat together, the weight of the day ahead hanging in the air, Emma leaned her head on James' shoulder. "I can't believe it's finally here," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. James wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. "I know," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But it feels right, doesn't it? It feels like we've been building up to this moment, and now it's time to start the next chapter." Emma nodded, her heart full. "It feels like the beginning of everything. I'm ready for whatever comes next, as long as I'm with you." James kissed the top of her head gently, holding her close. "And I'm ready too." For everything. With you. The morning of their wedding, Emma stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. She was overwhelmed with emotion, not because she was nervous, but because she was filled with a sense of peace. She had never imagined her life would turn out this way, but now, she couldn't imagine it any other way. As she walked down the aisle toward James, the world around her seemed to blur. It wasn't the grand ceremony or the fancy decorations that made this moment special. It was the way James looked at her, with love and admiration, as if she was everything he had ever dreamed of. When they exchanged their vows, Emma spoke from her heart, promising to stand by him through everything, to face every challenge with him, and to build a life full of love and joy. James, his voice thick with emotion, promised to love her, to protect her, and to cherish her every day of their lives. It wasn't just a wedding. It was the beginning of a new life, one where they would face everything together. As they walked down the aisle as husband and wife, hand in hand, they knew their story was just beginning. A story of love, redemption, and the promise of a future they would build together, side by side, every step of the way. As the days following their wedding passed, Emma and James found themselves settling into a new rhythm of life, one that was far different from the hectic, often isolated existence they had known before. It was not without its challenges, but each day, they grew stronger as a couple, learning to balance their individual dreams with the shared goals they had for their future. James, who had once been overwhelmed by the weight of his empire, now embraced the simplicity of his new life. The business was still a part of him, but it no longer defined him. He had entrusted capable hands to manage Carter Enterprises, giving him the freedom to explore the things he had long ignored. One of those things was time with Emma. They began taking short trips together, often to places James had never visited, despite his wealth and status. It was refreshing for both of them. No longer was he the powerful CEO, and no longer was she the nurse always on call. They were simply two people in love, enjoying the world around them. One Saturday afternoon, they drove to a small vineyard in the countryside. The air was fresh, the fields stretched out before them in lush green waves, and the small, charming farmhouse where they would stay for the weekend had a warm, welcoming feel. Emma smiled as she looked out over the rolling hills. "I can't believe how beautiful it is here," she said, her voice full of wonder. James, sitting next to her, smiled back, his eyes softening with affection. "It's been a long time since I've really stopped to appreciate beauty like this. I've spent so much of my life in boardrooms and meetings, but now, I can finally see the world around me." He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers as they continued to drive through the vineyard. Emma squeezed his hand in return. "This is what I've always wanted for us," she said quietly. "Not the fancy things, not the status. Just time. Time together, to experience life and enjoy the moments that matter." The weekend was a simple, peaceful one. They took long walks through the vineyards, hand in hand, tasting wines, talking about everything and nothing. At night, they sat by a small fire, the stars above them so bright it felt as though they could reach out and touch them. Each day, Emma and James uncovered new pieces of themselves, things they had never shared with anyone else. They spoke about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, and their deepest desires. For James, it was the first time he had truly let go of the persona he had worn for so long. For Emma, it was the beginning of discovering how strong she was, how much she had to offer, not just as a caregiver, but as a woman, a partner, and a dreamer. "I've always wanted to live like this," James said one evening as they watched the fire crackle. "To slow down, to appreciate the simple things. It feels right." Emma rested her head on his shoulder, her voice gentle. "It does. But the real beauty of it all is that we can do this because we're together. It's not just about the places we go, but the person I get to share it with." He smiled, the love in his eyes as clear as the stars above them. "I don't think I've ever been more sure of anything in my life," he said. "This is everything I've ever wanted, and more." The rest of the weekend passed in a haze of tranquility, a stark contrast to the chaos of their previous lives. As they drove back to the city, they both knew that this was a turning point for them. They had created a life built on love and mutual respect, a life that was far richer than any fortune James had ever acquired. Back at their apartment, they resumed their normal routines, but everything felt different now. They no longer saw life as a series of obligations or hurdles to overcome. Instead, they saw it as an adventure, one they would embark on together, side by side. But even as they basked in the peace they had found, they knew that life had a way of throwing challenges their way. And sure enough, it wasn't long before James received a call that would test everything they had built. His old business partner, someone he hadn't spoken to in months, called with news of an urgent situation at Carter Enterprises. A major deal, one that James had been deeply involved in before stepping away, was falling apart. The company was in jeopardy, and the team needed James to come back, to step in and use his expertise to save the deal. James had come so far in his healing, so far in his new life with Emma, that the thought of returning to the high-stress world of business made him anxious. But he also knew that he had worked for years to build Carter Enterprises, and he couldn't just abandon it. He was torn. Emma noticed the change in him immediately. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched when he answered the phone. "What's going on?" she asked, concern in her voice. James hesitated, looking at her for a moment before he spoke. "It's the company. There's a situation, and they need me to come back." Emma's heart sank. She had known this day might come, but she hadn't anticipated how it would feel. "Are you going to go?" she asked softly, her voice laced with worry. James ran a hand through his hair, the weight of the decision settling on him. "I don't know. I want to be here with you, Emma. But I also feel responsible for the company. It's part of me." Emma stood up and walked over to him, taking his hand in hers. "You don't have to make this decision alone," she said, her voice steady. "We'll figure this out together, just like we've done with everything else." James looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Emma," he whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." They stood together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Whatever challenges life threw their way, they knew they had each other, and that was more than enough to face anything the world had in store for them. As the days went by, the weight of the decision loomed over James. He had always been a man who thrived on making choices, on being the one who called the shots. But now, with Emma at his side, it felt different. This was no longer just about him or the company. It was about their future together, and the promise they had made to each other to always face challenges side by side. The phone call had stirred something deep inside James. The thought of going back to the life he had left behind was both comforting and terrifying. The idea of stepping back into the boardrooms, the high-stakes decisions, the endless pressure. It seemed like a lifetime ago, a version of himself he had worked hard to leave behind. But at the same time, the pull of responsibility, of his legacy, was hard to ignore. Emma noticed the change in him immediately. She saw the tension in his posture, the way he had withdrawn into himself, lost in thought. It had been a while since she had seen him like this, and it worried her. They had made so much progress together, had worked so hard to build something new. She didn't want to see him revert back to the man who had spent his life consumed by work, by a company that, in the end, didn't bring him the happiness he had been searching for. One evening, after a long day, Emma sat down next to James on the couch. The city lights flickered outside their window, casting a soft glow across the room. She looked at him, her voice gentle but firm. "James, I know this decision isn't easy for you, but I want you to really think about what it means. What is it that you're truly afraid of? Going back to that life? Or is it the fear of losing what we have now?" James turned to her, his expression serious. "I'm not afraid of losing you, Emma. I'm afraid of losing myself. I've worked my entire life to build something, and now it feels like it's all slipping away. I'm not sure I can just walk away from that." Emma reached out, taking his hand in hers. "You're not walking away from anything, James. You're choosing a new path, a better one. It's not about abandoning the company or your past. It's about choosing to live for what truly matters, for us, for the life we've started to build." James looked down at their hands, the weight of her words sinking in. He knew she was right. He had spent so much time focused on his career that he had neglected the one thing that truly mattered, the relationships he had with those he loved. And Emma had shown him that there was more to life than the corporate world, more than just the pursuit of success. "I don't want to go back to who I was," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to be the man who's here for you, the man who's present, who isn't always thinking about the next big deal." Emma squeezed his hand, her voice soft but full of conviction. "You already are that man, James. You just have to believe it." James looked at her, his heart full. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Emma," he whispered. "You've helped me see what really matters. and I don't want to lose that. She smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. You won't lose me. We're in this together, no matter what. In that moment, something inside James clicked. The clarity he had been searching for was finally there. He didn't need to go back to the past to find himself. He had already found himself, in Emma, in their life together. He realized that the life they were building was far more important than any business deal or legacy. He didn't need to sacrifice their happiness for a company. He had learned the hard way that success, wealth, and status were empty without someone to share them with. And now, with Emma, he had everything he needed. Over the next few days, James made the decision. He would stay away from the company, fully stepping into his new role. One that wasn't about managing a business, but about managing a life. He would focus on his health, his relationship with Emma, and the future they had ahead of them. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. And as he sat down to draft the final message to his business partners, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He wasn't walking away from his legacy. He was simply choosing to create a new one. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, James felt at peace with the choices he was making. Emma, seeing the change in him, smiled softly. I'm proud of you, James, she said one evening as they sat on the balcony together, the sunset painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. I know it wasn't easy, but you did it. James looked at her, his heart full of love and gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, Emma. You've made me realize what really matters. And as they sat there, side by side, watching the sun dip below the horizon, they both knew that their life together was just beginning. They had faced challenges, but they had overcome them, and now, they were ready to face the future, together, as partners, as equals, and as people who had found true happiness in each other. In the weeks that followed James' decision to step back from his business empire, life began to settle into a peaceful rhythm for both him and Emma. They had spent so many years running from one commitment to the next, trying to balance their professional lives with their personal desires. Now, they were focused on building a life together that was centered on love, simplicity, and true fulfillment. James felt the weight of his decision lifting off his shoulders each day. He had never known life without the constant pressure of running a massive company. Yet, now that he had taken the leap into a life with Emma, he realized just how much of himself he had sacrificed in the name of success. His days were no longer consumed by board meetings or conference calls. Instead, he found joy in the small, everyday moments, waking up to Emma's smile, cooking breakfast together, taking long walks in the park, and simply being present with her. It was a stark contrast to the life he had once lived, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. Emma, too, felt the change. For years, she had lived a life of giving, caring for others, making sure that the people around her were okay. But now, with James, she had found a love that was returned in equal measure. She no longer felt as though she were just the caretaker, always giving of herself without receiving. With James, it was different. Their relationship was one of balance and mutual support. Emma was no longer afraid to embrace her own dreams, knowing that James was there to encourage her every step of the way. One afternoon, while they were having coffee together in their favorite cafe, Emma looked at James, her eyes filled with warmth. I've been thinking, she began, her voice soft. We've both changed so much over the past few months. And I don't just mean in our relationship. I mean, we've both evolved, haven't we? James smiled at her, his heart swelling with affection. I know I have, he said. I used to think success was everything. That if I just worked hard enough, everything would fall into place. But now I see that true success comes from the people we love, the moments we share, and the life we build together. Emma nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I feel the same way, she said. I never thought I'd get to a point where I could focus on what truly makes me happy. But with you, I've learned that it's not about what you accomplish, it's about the life you create. The conversation turned to the future, to the things they wanted to do together. They had always dreamed of traveling, of seeing the world beyond the constraints of their old lives. James had promised Emma that one day, they would take a trip together, to visit places neither of them had ever been, to make memories that would last a lifetime. I want us to go to Paris, James said suddenly, his eyes lighting up. I've always wanted to go, but it was always about business trips, meetings, and deadlines. I want to see the city with you. No work, no distractions. Just us. Emma's face lit up. Paris? That sounds perfect. I've always wanted to go too, and what better way to see it than with you? They both laughed, the excitement of the future filling the space between them. It wasn't just about the destination. It was about the journey they would take together. That night, as they sat on their balcony, looking out at the city lights, James turned to Emma, his expression serious. You know, he began, I've been thinking about how far we've come. When I first woke up in the hospital, I had no idea where my life was going. I didn't know who I was without the company, without all the external validation. But now, I see things so differently. I found something that's more important than all of that, something real. Emma smiled, her heart full. I've seen that change in you, she said softly. And it's one of the things I love most about you. You're not just the man I fell in love with, but the man you've become. James leaned over, kissing her gently on the forehead. I'm the man I am because of you, he whispered. You've helped me become the person I always wanted to be, the person I was meant to be. Emma reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. And you've done the same for me, she replied. I've learned to dream again, to believe in myself and my own future. Together, we've created something beautiful, and I can't wait to see what comes next. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of love, travel, and growth. James and Emma went to Paris, just as they had dreamed, and it was everything they had hoped for and more. They walked the streets of Montmartre, visited the Louvre, and dined in quaint cafes along the Seine. Each moment was magical, not because of the city, but because they were experiencing it together. The trip was a reminder that life wasn't about the hustle or the work. It was about love, connection, and the simple joys of being with someone who truly cared. After returning from Paris, James and Emma began to think about what came next. They had built a life together, but there was still so much they wanted to accomplish. They talked about starting a family, building a home that was truly their own, and continuing to support each other in every aspect of their lives. They knew there would be challenges ahead, but they also knew they could face them together. James no longer felt the need to prove himself to anyone. He had everything he had ever needed. Emma by his side, a love that was real, and a future that was full of possibility. Emma, too, felt the peace that had eluded her for so many years. She had found someone who truly understood her, who supported her dreams, and who loved her for who she was. Their future was bright, and they were ready to face it hand in hand, together. As they sat together that evening, their lives intertwined in ways they could have never imagined. They both knew that this was only the beginning. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side, with love and trust guiding them every step of the way. As the seasons shifted and time continued to pass, Emma and James found themselves adjusting to the life they had chosen together. The peace they had worked so hard to find, the balance between their personal dreams and the love they shared, had begun to feel like their new normal. But even in the serenity of their shared life, challenges still arose, and as they faced them, they did so with a deeper understanding of each other. They had spent years cultivating their individual dreams. James had his success and empire, and Emma had her career as a nurse. Now, they were building something entirely new. They were no longer two individuals trying to coexist in a world that demanded their attention in different ways. Instead, they had found a rhythm where their dreams intertwined, where their personal growth was shared, and where the challenges of life were faced together. One evening, as they sat together in their living room, James turned to Emma with a thoughtful look. I've been thinking about something, he began, his voice calm but filled with weight. I've spent so much of my life focused on achieving things. My career, the company, the success. None of it truly gave me the fulfillment I was looking for. But with you, I've realized that the things I've been striving for, the things I thought defined me, aren't what truly matter. Emma looked at him, her heart swelling with pride and understanding. I know, she said softly. I've seen it in you. It's not about what we have or what we do. It's about the love and the life we create together. James smiled, reaching for her hand. Exactly. You helped me see that. You've made me realize that the only thing that truly matters is the person I am with you and the life we are building. It's not about how much money I have or how big the company gets. It's about how we grow together, how we love and support each other. Emma squeezed his hand, her heart full. I've always believed that, James. I've always believed that the most important thing in life is who you share it with. And with you, I know we're building something special. Over the next few weeks, James took steps to further distance himself from the pressures of his past. He continued to manage the transition at Carter Enterprises, delegating responsibilities to trusted colleagues while focusing more on his personal life. His relationship with Emma became his priority, and he found fulfillment not in business deals, but in the quiet moments they shared. They spent weekends exploring new places, learning about each other's interests, and building memories that would last a lifetime. One day, as they sat on a bench by the beach, watching the waves roll in, James turned to Emma with a smile. "You know, I never realized how much I needed this," he said, gesturing to the wide open sea before them. "The calm, the simplicity, the beauty of just being in the moment with you. It's like I've been too caught up in the noise of life to see the quiet moments that truly matter." Emma smiled back, her eyes soft with affection. "I think that's the key, James. Life isn't about the noise or the chaos. It's about finding peace in the quiet moments, in the space where we can just be ourselves." James leaned in, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "I don't ever want to lose this. I don't want to go back to that life where I'm always chasing something. I want to keep this feeling of contentment, this love we share." Emma's heart skipped a beat, her voice steady but full of emotion. "You don't have to go back. We've created something real, something that doesn't need to be fixed or filled with distractions. This is enough. We're enough." As they sat together, watching the sun dip below the horizon, they both knew that the future was uncertain, but it no longer seemed daunting. They had each other, and that was all they needed. The love they had was a foundation, and with it, they could face anything that came their way. As the months continued to pass, their bond deepened. They started to discuss what came next, starting a family, buying a house, continuing to grow in their careers, but always with the understanding that their love was at the center of it all. James had found a new sense of purpose that didn't involve his company, and Emma had found the courage to chase her own dreams, knowing she had the full support of the man she loved. One evening, as they sat in the garden of their new home, James took Emma's hand and looked at her with a smile. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he said. "This, right here, with you, is everything I've ever wanted, and I can't wait to see where we go from here." Emma looked at him, her heart full of love. "I feel the same way, James. We've come so far, and now we get to build something even greater. Together." Their journey had been long, and it had been full of challenges, but it had also been full of love, growth, and understanding. And as they stood together, hand in hand, looking out at the future before them, they knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Their love had brought them this far, and with each other by their side, they were ready to face whatever the next chapter held. As the days continued to unfold, Emma and James found themselves facing the next chapter of their lives with a sense of calm they had never known before. Their love, built on a foundation of mutual respect, trust, and understanding, was now a beacon that guided them through every decision. Together, they had conquered the challenges of the past, and now they were beginning to shape a future that was not just about surviving, but thriving. With their new home settled and their lives intertwined, they began to turn their attention to the future in ways they had never done before. They had once lived in separate worlds, each focused on individual goals and dreams. But now, their journey was a shared one, a partnership where each moment was about building something beautiful and lasting. It wasn't just the big dreams that mattered, like starting a family or expanding their careers. It was the quiet moments, the laughter shared over dinner, the long walks they took hand in hand, the nights spent talking about everything and nothing. These were the moments that solidified their bond, that gave their love the depth it needed to withstand anything. One evening, as they sat together on the porch of their new home, enjoying the warmth of the setting sun, James turned to Emma with a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know," he said quietly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said before, about how our lives used to be so separate. It's funny, because even though we've built something so incredible together, it feels like we've always been meant to be this way, as if we were just waiting for the right time to meet." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with love. "I know what you mean," she said softly. "It feels like everything we've been through has led us to this moment, to this life we're building now. We've both changed in ways we never expected, but I think it's made us stronger, made us appreciate what we have even more." James nodded, his gaze thoughtful. I never thought I'd be here, in a place where I can actually enjoy the simple things. It's not about what we have or what we've done. It's about the life we've created together, and that's more than I ever thought I could have. Emma reached out and took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. I feel the same way, she said, her voice steady and warm. I've found a part of myself that I didn't even know I was missing, and it's all because of you. James looked at her, his eyes filled with tenderness. You've helped me find that part of myself too, Emma. You've shown me what it means to live fully, to love without holding back. I don't know where I would be without you. She smiled at him, her heart swelling with emotion. And I don't know where I'd be without you either, she whispered. I think we've both learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other every single day, no matter what life throws our way. As the weeks passed, they continued to grow closer, strengthening the foundation they had built. Their lives, once filled with uncertainty and doubt, had now become a story of hope, of second chances, and of love that refused to be limited by the past. Emma had begun to explore new passions of her own, things she had put on hold for years. She had always wanted to get more involved in community work, to give back in ways that were meaningful to her. Now, with the freedom she had found in her relationship with James, she was able to pursue those dreams. James, too, had begun to think about what he wanted for the future, not just in terms of business or success, but in terms of the legacy they would create together. One evening, as they sat in their living room, James turned to Emma with a smile. I've been thinking, he began, his voice soft, about what we want for the future, not just for us, but for the world around us. There's so much more I want to do, to make a difference, in ways that go beyond anything I've done before. Emma looked at him, intrigued. Like what? She asked, her curiosity piqued. I don't know exactly, he said, but I feel like we have so much to give. Maybe we can start something together. Something that helps others, something that reflects what we've learned about love, life, and what really matters. Emma's heart swelled at the thought. She had always dreamed of doing something meaningful, something that could help make the world a better place. And now, with James by her side, that dream felt within reach. I love that idea, she said, her voice filled with excitement. We've built this beautiful life together, and now we can take it further, share it with others in a way that will truly make an impact. James nodded, his eyes lighting up. Exactly. I want to create something that stands for what we believe in, something that reflects who we are as a couple. The conversation turned to ideas, to ways they could combine their passions and resources to make a difference. They both had a vision of a world where people were supported, where love was given freely, and where communities were stronger because of it. It wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about the impact they could have on others, about creating a legacy that was built on kindness, understanding, and shared purpose. As they discussed their plans, Emma and James knew that whatever came next in their journey, they would face it together. The life they had created wasn't just about them. It was about the love they had for each other, and the love they wanted to share with the world. And as they sat together, dreaming of the future, they knew that they had only just begun. Their story was still unfolding, and with each day, they were writing a new chapter, one filled with love, growth, and the promise of a future that was boundless and beautiful. The months that followed were a turning point for both Emma and James. They had spent so much time in their individual worlds, focused on their careers, their pasts, and the separate lives they had lived. Now, they were building a future together, one where their dreams, desires, and values merged into a shared journey. Their commitment to each other grew stronger with every day, and as they started to explore their future more deeply, new challenges and opportunities began to surface. One afternoon, as they sat together in their living room, talking about the future and everything they wanted to achieve, James turned to Emma, his expression serious yet hopeful. You know, Emma, he said, his voice thoughtful, I've been thinking a lot about what we can create together. It's not just about us. It's about how we can make an impact in the world. I've spent so much of my life focused on the business, and now I realize that it's time to focus on something bigger, something that reflects who we are as a couple. Emma looked at him, intrigued. What do you have in mind? She asked, her curiosity piqued. James smiled, a spark of excitement in his eyes. I've been thinking about starting a foundation, something that could help people in need. I want to take everything we've learned about love, resilience, and the power of giving and create something meaningful. Maybe we could work on projects that support families, healthcare, education, things that matter to us. We have the resources, and now we have the vision. It's time to make a difference. Emma's heart swelled as she listened to him. She had always dreamed of making a greater impact, but she had never been sure how. Now, with James by her side, she realized that they could achieve so much together. I love that idea, she said, her voice filled with emotion. We've always talked about the things that matter to us, helping others, giving back. Now we can do something about it. Create a legacy that will truly make a difference. James nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. We can start small, local projects, community outreach. But eventually, I'd like to see it grow into something global, something that touches people's lives in ways we can't even imagine yet. Emma smiled, feeling a sense of purpose like never before. Let's do it, she said, her voice firm but full of excitement. We'll start planning right away. Over the next few months, Emma and James worked together to bring their vision to life. They researched organizations, met with experts in philanthropy, and mapped out their goals. They wanted to create a foundation that was not only effective but also personal, something that reflected their shared values and would have a lasting impact. They decided to focus on causes that were close to their hearts, helping children in underserved communities, supporting mental health initiatives, and providing educational opportunities for those who needed it most. As they developed their ideas, they encountered their fair share of obstacles. There were questions about how to structure the foundation, how to get the right people involved, and how to ensure that their efforts would be sustainable. But through it all, they never wavered in their commitment to each other and the vision they shared. They knew that no matter how challenging the road ahead might be, they were stronger together. One evening, after a long day of planning, James sat with Emma, reflecting on how far they had come. Can you believe this? He said, looking around their office. A few years ago, I was completely consumed by my company. I never even dreamed I'd be sitting here, planning a foundation, talking about giving back, about making a real difference. Emma smiled, her heart full. I think we've always been capable of this, she said. It just took the right timing, the right love, and the right person to bring it out of us. James reached across the table, taking her hand in his. I couldn't have done it without you, Emma. You've been my partner in every sense of the word. You helped me see that there's more to life than business, than success. There's so much more to give, to share. Emma squeezed his hand, her eyes shining. And we're doing it. We're creating something that will last, something that will make the world better. Over time, their foundation began to take shape. They launched initiatives in local communities, partnered with other organizations that shared their vision, and began to see the tangible impact of their work. The joy they felt from helping others was immeasurable, and they were both humbled by the gratitude they received from the people whose lives they were touching. But it wasn't just about the work. As they saw the positive changes they were making in the world, they also felt a deep sense of fulfillment in their personal lives. They had found a purpose beyond their love for each other. They had found a mission, one that gave them the strength to face any challenge together. Their love had evolved into something bigger than either of them had ever imagined. One evening, as they sat together in their garden, watching the sunset, James turned to Emma. Do you ever think about how far we've come? He asked. It's crazy to think that just a few years ago, I was in a hospital bed, not knowing what the future held. And now, here we are, creating something that will leave a lasting impact. Emma smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. I do think about it, she said softly. And I'm so proud of us. We've built a life together that matters. And now we're building something bigger, something that will make the world a better place. James kissed the top of her head. We're just getting started, he said. And no matter where this journey takes us, I know we'll face it together, side by side. And as they sat together, surrounded by the beauty of their shared life, they knew that whatever the future held, they were ready. With love as their foundation, there was nothing they couldn't achieve together. As Emma and James continued their work with the foundation, they found themselves deep in the process of creating something that was bigger than they had ever imagined. Their shared vision of making a lasting impact was no longer just an idea. It was becoming a reality. Each day, they saw the fruits of their labor in the form of local communities thriving, children being given opportunities they never thought possible, and families gaining access to resources that had been out of reach. It was fulfilling in a way neither of them had expected. They had always focused on the idea of success in the traditional sense: wealth, status, achievements. But now, success meant something entirely different. It meant creating a legacy that could change lives. As their foundation grew, so did the challenges. Managing a growing organization was no easy feat, and as much as they wanted to give it their all, Emma and James knew they couldn't do everything themselves. They brought in a team of dedicated professionals who shared their passion for the mission. But even with a team in place, there were moments when the weight of it all felt overwhelming. Late one night, after a long day of meetings and strategy sessions, Emma found herself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of papers. The foundation was flourishing, but it required constant attention, constant effort, and sometimes she wondered if they were doing enough. James entered the room, having just finished up a phone call. He could see the tiredness in Emma's eyes, the way she seemed distant, lost in thought. "Hey," he said gently, sitting down beside her. "What's going on? You've been quiet all evening." Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I just feel like I'm not doing enough," she admitted. "The foundation is growing, and the projects we're working on are making a real difference. But sometimes I wonder if we're reaching everyone we should be. There's so much more to be done, and it's hard to keep up with it all." James placed a hand on hers, his touch grounding her. "Emma, you've already done so much," he said softly. "You've helped build this from the ground up, and the difference we've made already is incredible. It's okay to feel overwhelmed sometimes. We can't fix everything at once, but that doesn't mean we aren't making a difference." Emma looked at him, her heart heavy with emotion. "But we could be doing more. I keep thinking about all the people who still need help, and I wonder if we're really doing enough to reach them." James smiled gently, understanding the pressure she was putting on herself. "We will reach them, Emma. We've only just begun, and we're doing it together. The most important thing is that we're making progress, no matter how small it may seem. One step at a time." Emma smiled weakly, comforted by his words. She knew he was right. They couldn't do everything, but they were doing their best, and that was enough. As they sat there, in the quiet of their home, they realized how far they had come. Their journey had not been easy. It had been full of challenges, both personal and professional. But through it all, they had found strength in each other. Their love had been the foundation of everything they had built, both the life they shared and the work they were doing to help others. A few weeks later, Emma and James took a short break to reflect on their progress. They went away for a weekend to a quiet cabin in the mountains, a place where they could disconnect from the world and reconnect with each other. It was a time to recharge, to remember why they had started this journey in the first place. As they hiked through the forest one morning, the sun peeking through the trees, James turned to Emma, his face serious yet filled with admiration. "I don't say this enough, but I'm so proud of you," he said. "You've been the heart of this foundation. Your passion, your dedication, it's inspiring. I couldn't have done this without you." Emma's heart warmed at his words. "We've done this together, James," she replied. "I couldn't have done it without you either. You've given me the confidence to pursue this dream, to believe that we can make a difference." They stood in silence for a moment, taking in the beauty of the world around them. It wasn't just the mountains or the trees that made this moment special. It was the quiet understanding between them, the recognition that they had found something truly meaningful in their work and in each other. That evening, as they sat on the porch of the cabin, watching the sunset, Emma looked at James, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I think we've found what we were always meant to do," she said softly. James nodded, his gaze far away but content. "I think so too. This is what I've been searching for my whole life: purpose, meaning, and love. And it's all right here." They knew that the path ahead wouldn't always be easy. The foundation would continue to face obstacles, and their personal lives would always require balance and effort. But one thing was clear: they had each other, and together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. As they sat there, side by side, the sun sinking below the horizon, they knew that their journey was far from over. It had only just begun, and with each other's support, they would continue to build something beautiful, not just for themselves, but for the world they were working to make better. As the months passed, Emma and James continued to pour their hearts into the foundation, watching it grow and evolve in ways they had once only dreamed about. The work was demanding, but the rewards were far more fulfilling than anything they had imagined. The lives they were changing, the communities they were supporting, and the hope they were inspiring fueled their passion. Still, balancing the demands of the foundation with their personal lives was never easy. But they had come to rely on each other more than ever, finding strength in their partnership, their shared vision, and the love they had for one another. One afternoon, after a particularly busy week of meetings and outreach programs, Emma and James sat together on their porch, the sound of crickets filling the air as the sun began to set. The warm, golden light painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, and for a moment, everything felt still. James turned to Emma with a contemplative look on his face. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "About everything we've built, everything we've been working toward. I think we've created something really special. But I also feel like there's more we can do." Emma glanced at him, sensing the weight in his words. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice gentle. "I mean, we've done so much already," James continued. "But I feel like we're just scratching the surface. There are so many more people out there who need help, so many communities that need support. What if we could expand this, make a bigger impact, reach more people?" Emma nodded, understanding his desire for more. "I agree. There's so much potential for what we can do. But we also have to remember to pace ourselves. We've already accomplished so much, and it's okay to take it step by step." James smiled softly, his gaze softening. "I know, but I just want to do more. For you, for me, for all of us. I want our work to matter, to leave a lasting mark on the world." Emma squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with understanding. "It already does," she said. "Every life we touch, every person we help, that's what matters. It doesn't have to be about the scale, James. It's about the heart behind it. And you've given so much heart to everything we do." James leaned back, looking out at the horizon, the weight of her words settling in. "You're right," he said, his voice thoughtful. "I've been so focused on growth, on expansion, but I haven't stopped to truly appreciate how far we've come." Emma smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And we've come a long way," she said softly. "But the important thing is that we've done it together. We've built something meaningful, and we've done it because we care. That's more than enough." They sat in silence for a while, taking in the peaceful evening, both reflecting on their journey. Over the past few years, they had faced so many challenges, personal, professional, emotional, but they had always managed to work through them. They had learned to communicate, to trust each other, and most importantly, to support one another through every twist and turn. It had not been easy, but it had been worth it. As the days went by, Emma and James continued to find new ways to balance their personal lives with their growing foundation. They continued to focus on helping those in need, expanding their outreach programs, and making a difference in the lives of the most vulnerable. But as their work grew, so did their desire to ensure they were making the most of their time together. They had realized early on that their love for each other was the foundation upon which everything else stood. Without that love, they would have nothing. And so, they made time to enjoy life together outside of their work. They traveled, explored new places, and rediscovered the simple joys they had once shared before their busy lives took over. One weekend, they took a trip to the coast, staying in a small beach house where they could relax, disconnect, and recharge. The days were spent walking along the shore, watching the waves crash against the rocks, and having long conversations about their future. In the quiet of the beach house, with nothing but the sound of the ocean to fill the silence, they were reminded of what truly mattered. The love they shared, the partnership they had built, and the promise they had made to one another to always be there, no matter what. One evening, as they watched the sunset together, James turned to Emma with a smile. "I think this is what I've been searching for all along," he said softly. "Not success, not wealth, but peace. The kind of peace I find when I'm with you, when we're together, doing something we both believe in." Emma's heart swelled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I feel the same way," she whispered. "I found something I never even knew I was looking for, purpose, love, and the joy of sharing it all with you." James kissed the top of her head gently, his arms wrapping around her. "No matter where life takes us, I'll always be grateful for this moment, for this love we have. We've built something beautiful, Emma, and I can't wait to see what comes next." They sat there, in the quiet of the evening, their hearts full of love, content in the knowledge that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The journey was far from over, but with each passing day, they knew they had found something lasting, something worth fighting for. And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they felt more certain than ever that their story was only just beginning. As the years passed, Emma and James continued to build their life together, with every moment reinforcing the love they shared and the commitment they had made to each other. Their foundation had grown stronger, and their efforts to help others had reached new heights. The impact they made in their communities and beyond was something they both had always dreamed of, but never imagined would be possible. They had gone from two people trying to find their way to two partners who had created a world together, a world where love, purpose, and happiness took center stage. Life had come full circle in ways neither of them had expected. They had both healed from their pasts, faced their fears, and found each other not just as a couple, but as equal partners, united by a shared vision for the future. Their work had never been about recognition or fame. It had always been about making a difference, one life at a time, one community at a time. And as they sat together in their home, reflecting on everything they had accomplished, they both realized that their journey was far from over. "Do you ever stop and think about how far we've come?" Emma asked one evening, her voice filled with wonder. James smiled, pulling her closer as they sat by the fire. "I do," he replied, his voice warm and full of love. "And every time I think about it, I'm more grateful than I ever thought possible. We've created something real, something lasting." Emma nodded, her heart full of contentment. "And we did it together. That's the best part." James looked at her with admiration. "We've built a life that matters. And we're going to keep building it, side by side. We have so much more to give." Emma smiled softly, her fingers tracing his hand. "You know, when I first met you, I never imagined we'd be here, doing this. I never thought I'd find someone who not only loved me, but also shared my vision for the future. But now, I see that everything we've been through, every step we've taken, has led us to this moment. And I wouldn't trade it for anything." James kissed the top of her head gently. "I feel the same way. We've come so far, but we're just getting started. The best is yet to come." As they continued to reflect on their journey, they both knew that there would always be challenges ahead. Life was not always easy, and there would be times when the weight of their responsibilities felt heavy. But they had come to understand that the key to overcoming anything was to face it together. Their love for each other, their shared commitment to making the world a better place, and their unshakable bond would always be their foundation. They would continue to grow, continue to dream, and continue to support each other every step of the way. Over the years, they had learned that true success was not measured by wealth or status, but by the impact they made on the world and the love they shared. It was about the quiet moments, the conversations, the decisions made together, and the way they had each grown as individuals and as a couple. And so, as they sat together in their home, surrounded by the love they had built, they knew that their journey would continue to unfold in beautiful and unexpected ways. The future was full of possibilities, and they were ready to embrace it together. With each passing day, their love for each other deepened, and their commitment to their mission grew stronger. Together, they had created something lasting, something that would live on far beyond their time. They had made a difference, and they had done it together. And as they looked forward to the next chapter of their lives, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them hand in hand, with love guiding them every step of the way. The journey they had started together had only just begun, and with each new day, they would continue to build the life they had always dreamed of, filled with purpose, love, and the joy of knowing that together, they could conquer anything. In this touching and inspiring story, follow the journey of two individuals who defy the odds and discover what true success really means. Their story unfolds through trials, self-discovery, and ultimately the building of a life together, proving that real fulfillment is not about wealth or status, but the relationships we build and the impact we make on others. From a powerful millionaire's struggle to redefine success to a woman who discovers her own strength through love and partnership, this story captures the essence of transformation. Their shared journey teaches valuable lessons about love, purpose, and the strength found in overcoming adversity together. This is a tale of redemption, love, and building something lasting, where millionaire stories aren't just about financial wealth, but the wealth of human connection and mutual support. With each step, they learn that the most important things in life are those that cannot be measured in money, but in the impact you make and the love you share. These millionaire stories offer inspiration to anyone looking to understand the true meaning of success and how, sometimes, the richest experiences in life are those that come from giving, growing, and sharing life with someone who truly matters. Through their journey, these millionaire stories illustrate that the most valuable legacy we can leave behind is not the wealth we accumulate, but the love and kindness we spread along the way.